Very good. So it's it's been as everybody, we've had a complicated year and a half at the laboratory, but it's still a great privilege to lead this great lab, and it's really been a very productive time for us. In fact, so this photo here is, we name our roads after Nobel Prize winners at the lab. So we have a new one. We at a corner of Lawrence, Doudna, and Smoot. We've added our first female Nobelist, Jennifer Doudna, to the road. And we also had a celebration of our 90th anniversary this year. So we just had an event celebrating we've had program all year long on it, but we had a Founders Day where the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, was with us. She was actually here live the week before and then was on Zoom for our Founders Day event. So and many of these slides are ones that I talk about the laboratory generally, including to the Department of Energy. And I start with, what does the nation need from Berkeley Lab? And I talk about scientific solutions addressing national priorities, energy and climate resilience, the environment, health, and the economy, but energy and climate is really at the forefront now for us, and discovery science. And of course, our Nobel Prize is the example of someone who's Jennifer Doudna, who's contributed both to discovery science, but also her discovery of CRISPR-Cas9, which is revolutionizing biology and medicine. Also, unique scientific capabilities and facilities. Our national user facilities have been extremely important in research on COVID in the last year and a half. Our managed large research teams are important technologies of strategic national interest with long, difficult R&D paths, especially clean energy technologies. Our response to national emergencies, which we've seen in the last year. And I always emphasize, most importantly, the diverse group of highly trained, creative individuals that are committed to work here together on these grand national challenges. So, and on our great scientists, let me say a word more. Jennifer Doudna was a longtime user of our advanced light source and a faculty scientist here. And she came and she got a small laboratory directed R&D project here several years ago, because working with Jill Banfield on this new thing they'd found called CRISPR, and they wanted to do this study about what it was, understand the nature of it, with no idea that at that time whether it had medical connections or not. And so we were happy to have that part of the history. I also make the point of my predecessor, Paul Alvasados, as director, who won the highest award in chemistry this year. This is actually a photo of him getting his National Medal of Science and Technology from Barack Obama. Paul became the president of the University of Chicago this year. So that's a great honor for him, and we continue to work with him there. But also our lab, we've had 2 Lawrence Awards, which are the highest award for the Department of Energy for mid-career scientists, 5 early career research programs for our young scientists, and our continued group of people who are National Academy members and American Academy members. These are the people that really make the laboratory a special contributor to the national research enterprise. Now, I want to say some more things about people, but this is about our scientific leadership. We've just announced, and Carol is joining us by phone at this meeting, Carol Burns. This is the deputy directors and then the associate laboratory directors and division directors for the laboratory. So this is our collective scientific leadership. So Carol Burns has just joined us as deputy director for research and chief research officer, replacing Horace Simon, who continues at the lab after 11 years as deputy. So Carol comes to us from Los Alamos, is going to be a great leader at the laboratory. Actually, also, I want to mention Therese Leone, who's joined us as chief counsel at the laboratory. She's been deputy campus counsel at UC Berkeley. This is the whole research leadership here. And I make the point that we have 33 research leaders shown on this slide. 14 of them are women, and this number was 6 only 5 years ago. So actually, just by making sure we hire the best person for the job and do a good job of looking for that have had a dramatic difference in the gender representation of this leadership. And similarly, this is our operations leadership, and Michael Brandt is our other deputy director. Of course, he's the deputy director for operations, and you see a lot of Michael at these meetings, and and he's been really leading the operations during this time of COVID at the laboratory, and the people who help him do that. So these national user facilities are more and more, we see these as the superpowers of the laboratory. And as we went into our pandemic response back in March of 2020, the first thing we did was to get these user facilities, which is the Advanced Light Source to do X-rays for biology, chemistry, and more, the Joint Genome Institute, Nanoscience Center and Molecular Foundry, our High Performance Computing Center, Perlmutter, and ESNet, which is the network that ties the DOE labs together. These all had a critical role in the research response to COVID starting a year and a half ago. So they were the first things we had to get up. And they all had very important roles in building with other laboratories our understanding of the structure of the virus and actually doing development of some of the antivirals that have been used. Looking to more generally our continuing strategic priorities to shape the future, our laboratory has four major, really large major research areas: chemistry and material science, fundamental physics, where we do things about the beginning of the structure of the universe, computing sciences that are used now to enable scientific discovery, not just at DOE, but across the country, using our high performance computing, and our new capabilities in biological environmental science. You saw the Joint Genome Institute here. We have the largest Department of Energy laboratory in biological environmental science. Those are our four main research themes, but also two continuing priorities: attracting, recruiting, and retaining the diverse workforce of the future, which is more and more a center of what we need to do for the country. And then infrastructure renewal that I'll talk about, how we're building a new laboratory for the future here, rehabilitating and renewing the laboratory so that we can continue to be a modern laboratory 10 and 20 years from now. So I'm going to spend just on the research areas. I'm just going to flash through a few of the major ways in which we are addressing the climate crisis here, because that's important for the new administration. It's important for us. And in fact, it's a very good match. We've started a new energy storage center. This is about energy storage, of course, batteries, and all the way batteries are needed, including grid for the electric grid, so we can use renewable energy more of the time, but also other chemical, thermal, mechanical types of energy storage. And Noah Bakhtin is the new executive director for this energy storage center. And they're one of the Biden administration has some energy earth shots. And one of the energy earth shots, these are like moon shots, but for the benefit of the earth and energy and climate change. And they're looking at the long duration storage shot as a way of looking at how we can store energy so we can really go to a carbon neutral grid. Other things which, although it's not energy, water is as important to energy in our climate resilience. So we are working on research on everything to do with making a circular water economy. The problem we've had historically, we've had where we bring water out of the ground, we use it once, we throw it away. We can't do that anymore. We need more energy efficient ways of manufacturing water and of reusing water, so we have a circular water economy. And this is all, we're looking at every part about that. And a key of this is the National Alliance for Water Innovation, which we are running here and looking more and more at how to develop the technologies to make reused and remanufactured water, recleaned water, to pipe parity, just as cheap as pulling it out of the ground. Other things on climate resilience and response, to look at the left, to achieve net zero for the climate, we need the capability, we need to go beyond not putting more carbon dioxide in. We need to move towards removing 10 to 20 gigatons per year from the atmosphere. And to show the scale of that, we're currently adding about 50 gigatons per year from the whole world economy. So that's how much effort one has, what a great effort it is. So this is enormous effort, but it's time to get started on developing the technologies. So we have an initiative called negative emission technologies, a carbon negative initiative, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and from the ocean by a large scale deployment of things that can be done in an affordable way. And this is a really big, challenging problem that we're just starting to really work through. Another one of the Biden Earth shots is on hydrogen. It's on how to use hydrogen as an energy storage device, because one can basically split water using renewable energy, and the important thing is using clean energy. And then with that, it can then store that energy and use it more or less as a liquid fuel. You can use it for all sorts of things. And people realize that it would actually is needed to make certain parts of the economy carbon neutral. So we're working on the production, the clean production of hydrogen, meaning from renewable energy, the delivery, the storage, and the conversion of that into useful things to do. This is a big national program, and we will have for example, we're leading the Million Mile Fuel Cell Truck Consortium. This is how to make the long haul trucks that actually can last for 1 million miles that use hydrogen fuel cells. It's something that we're going to need. Another thing that you might not think of the department doing and the laboratory doing, but we're working on decarbonizing agriculture for the bioeconomy. Agriculture is one of the harder things to make carbon neutral in some sense, but you can actually make it part of the solution and not just part of the problem. So we need to use less energy and water but also how to use our soils to store carbon. And then finally, turning forest waste into bioenergy we're developing with the state of California a mobile biorefinery platform that can actually produce bioproducts. We do have a big program here on how to develop aviation fuels from bioproducts at a cost competitive price point. Another example of where we're looking at new technologies to bring to this problem is geothermal. This is going to be a new era for geothermal energy sources. And so we have people working on developing better use of understanding geothermal drilling, so we can actually bring this energy source out of the ground in a way that, of course, doesn't release carbon, and innovative approaches that use it and can use it directly, geothermal, for heating, cooling, energy storage, and mineral recovery, and how we actually connect community geothermal, where we're getting it locally and using it locally, is something that we're beginning to work on as well. So another theme of the Biden administration is that is energy justice, that the things that have been done to develop the energy economy have often benefited the already pretty well off, and not the people who are most in need of it, and the people often who have to suffer from the energy technologies, from the pollution it causes, are the people who are least able to absorb that. So we've had several people at the laboratory who have been working on policy, finance, and business models, how you make sure that as you develop a clean energy technology, you have innovative and equitable solutions. And it turns out we have 5 of our researchers are on detail to the Department of Energy, working with their energy justice on formulating what is meant by that. How do you actually implement this? So we have graduate student and senior researchers working with them, shown here. Also, we have 2 more people that are detailed to the Department of Energy now. Lady Edos, I'll talk about in a minute, who developed our diversity, equity, and inclusion program, is basically on loan or on rent. They're paying for her salary for a year at the Department of Energy to develop their diversity, equity, inclusion, and energy justice programs. And Jessica Granderson, who's one of our senior leaders in the energy technologies areas on building technologies, is temporarily serving at the Council on Environmental Quality. It was Gina McCarthy wanted her to come and help the White House figure out their strategy, so she's working with them. We're quite proud to have that as contributions. Finally, we're also have been talked to the secretary when she was here visiting about what we're doing on place-based research on things we're doing in our communities. We have a series of custom-built sensors which track black carbon pollution in West Oakland. That's a particular problem from the trucks going to the port there, and how we can actually monitor that so we can actually work on fixing it. We have people working on ventilation in schools. Clean air has been a problem of this laboratory for a long time, so we're bringing this to bear on the present crisis in schools about ventilation. And finally, we have people working on geothermal energy from the Salton Sea, but also how to do lithium recovery from that, so we're not dependent on China, for example, for our lithium production. So to wrap up on a couple more things, I said we're building the Berkeley Lab of the future. We have projects. We finished our integrative genomics building, which is our new building that has the Joint Genome Institute that's is now in place. We're also doing a lot of work on cooling towers and resilient generators, on supply water, on drain repairs, lots of infrastructure renewal at the laboratory. We have a new building, a bioenvironmental program integration building that we're going to be starting in a couple of months. We're going to build take down some of our seismically poor buildings, including our old cafeteria, and put in a new welcome center. Department of Energy is paying for these are large projects. And finally, we're going to be building this is the welcome center we're planning. And this new biology campus here, we've had the integrative genomics building, we're building BioEpic, and we'll build BioGem after that. And this is over some time. And also on we've cleaned up at a enormous effort. We've cleaned up successfully what's called now the Charter Hill part of the campus. And our compact with the community is all of our building will be on brownfield sites, and we've rehabilitated these brownfield sites to where we can, over time, put new buildings on them for modern laboratories. So finally, I've made a very great emphasis on our inclusion, diversity, equity, and accountability program over the last 3 years. We have an office that Lady Edo started reporting directly to me. It has really been very important to me that we had this going before we went into the pandemic of the last year and a half, so that we could build in these principles into how we dealt with things during the pandemic. And we're talking about our stewardship of the laboratory for the future and our stewardship principles, which we've built up the discussion with the laboratory, that are team science, respect, service, innovation, and trust. And a lot of our time has been talked about how we, as we build back the laboratory, we build it back better to a more inclusive, diverse, and equitable laboratory. And so on my closing, here are those 5 stewardship principles. We have built a lot of trust with the laboratory through a lot of communication over this pandemic, and we would like to use this trust to make sure that we develop these principles of stewardship of the laboratory so that we actually have a laboratory that is able to be a national treasure for 10 and 20 years from now. And our goal is to embed these values through concrete behaviors in the way we do our work. And they're really things that already exist here. It's just taking the best of the laboratory and building that into a conversation on what our culture is. So that's our run through of status of the laboratory. So I'll stop sharing so I can see you all again and say, so that's what we've been talking about. So.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mike. Excellent overview, and takes your breath away, the extent and scope of all that's going on there. Unbelievable. Any follow-up questions, comments from the group? We have ample time here, so please join in the conversation. Diz, go ahead.
I know that it's not necessarily a big part of what you're doing, but it's a big part of what we need to do to try to pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And you talk about agriculture. And if you listen to the pundits and people that actually know that we're counting on trees and forests and so on to do a lot of the work to get that carbon out of the atmosphere. But the challenge that we have is it's very, 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 very hard to quantify. So things like using it for carbon credits is agriculture. It depends on the field, and the field next door is very different in the different year and the different everything. So are you working on how to quantify?
Well, we're working on things like how to measure that. So how do you actually measure, a big question, as you sort of point out, is to what extent this carbon that's brought in soils in this way actually sticks, that stays down, that you don't lose it the next year. And that's actually a hard problem. So they've been coming up with ways, even accelerator-based ways, you can actually measure the carbon and how it's been embedded there and in a way that's continuing. So you can actually be assured that you're actually freezing the carbon in and not just recycling it and out again. We're also doing on these the effects of warming on how carbon is fixed in plants. That's what this BioEpic program is. There's going to be these ecopods, which are laboratory systems where you actually have closed systems that are pretty large. They're meters large, where you have soil. You can do controlled experiments tied to field experiments, which are out in California and Massachusetts and elsewhere, where they're actually warming soils and can measure, actually putting in extra heat about where they'll be 10 years from now, and actually see how the carbon handling is different in those situations, what are the effects, and then reproduce those so you can do laboratory experiments and build up models that are actually realistic. Because we do not have the uncertainty in how much carbon will, as things get warmer, whether the carbon fixing gets better or worse, we don't know yet. I mean, that's how the level of information here is still very poor. So okay. It's so reducing the uncertainty in those models is the sort of thing we can do.
And from a policy standpoint, that's super important, because you need to get trust that we can actually remove. Yeah. And if we're going to use carbon credits, how does that? Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah, you need to have metrics you actually believe and trust, and they have to be done by at a way. There's the equivalent of the national. We have the National Institutes for Standards. You need those sort of standards, just as you do for cryptography and for electronics. You need to have standards for carbon fixing. That you actually can trust and defend.
Yeah, interesting. Any other questions or comments for Mike? Rich, go ahead.
Mike, thanks for your Thanks for your talk. It's always interesting to see how the laboratory is continuing to change. Certainly it's changed a lot since I was a graduate student there. The question I have for you is, so the pandemic has been kind of a field experiment in how we collaborate, I guess, for lack of a better descriptor. Because, I mean, certainly I always felt that being at the lab and, you know, obviously you can get meeting overload and things like that, but being able to walk into a colleague's office and talk to them about some mutual problem, or I have a question that I need somebody to help me with. And in the sort of the recent past with all the Zooming and so forth, I wonder if the laboratory has collected any data or any notions on the question about what a collaborative scientific culture looks like going forward. How much did we learn something from the pandemic that says we can work smarter, maybe spending more time at home or less time at home? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to know.
I'm spending a good fraction of all my time on exactly this problem now. So I can, we've run a grand experiment, as you say. Up until a year and a half ago, the idea was basically to first order, no work could be done remotely because, we don't know what's going on and we don't know how to manage it. And then all of a sudden in March 2020, we had that blown out of the water by real events. So, and we've learned an enormous amount about what needs to be here, what can be done elsewhere, and also about when people can be productive. And so to give you an example, it turns out some parts of people doing software, their productivity went up, in this period, or in engineering design. But on the other hand, of course, as you say, if to form team building, it really helps to have these people together in a room. So how do you mix this? So we set up a group. It's been working on what we call the future of work a group, to working at what's the work going to look like, a year and beyond from now. And it's going to have more flexible working conditions. We're going to have people who are working on site all the time. We're going to have people in various stages of telework, they might be at the lab 1 day a week or 2 days a week or 3 days a week or 4 days a week for different things. And then and there will be a lot of those. And then there will be some number of people who actually will be remote working, only very occasionally coming to the lab. That's a rather small group, but some. But to give you an example, for people there are people now who are commuting, during when they're coming to the lab, they're commuting 2-3 hours a day, frankly, because of our housing and everything else around. This can't be good. This can't be good either for their family or for their job, that they're spending 20 hours a week in commuting. That's not. So now in this situation, we realize that by spending 2 or 3 days a week at work, 2 or 3 days, and organizing their work that way, that all that time gotten back from commuting is better for work and life, both. So we're going to have these new modes of working, and we're now going out with toolkits to all the divisions to tell us who's going to be working in what mode in this time. Now, it's going to put more burden on supervisors on managing people in this situation, because the thing that if you think about it, we're pretty good now at having meetings that are all Zoom. We sort of figured out how to do that. We're very good at having meetings that are all in person. We're not very good at having meetings that are half in person and half in Zoom. That's a new thing that we don't. So we're rebuilding conference rooms all over the lab to get ready for if some of the people are away and some of the people are here, how can we have a meeting where the people who are away feel they're just as much part of the meeting as the people in the room? So we're going to deal with those sorts of problems. And also, how do you manage cohesion in an organization where not everybody's in the building every day? So we're gonna call on our managers are gonna have to be more active and flexible and agile managers than they have been. Uh, and the only and we need to do this because frankly the whole society is going to this, and it's going to be important for recruitment and retention of people that you are an organization that can manage this, because if not, people are going to go to another place to work where they are.
Yeah,
So
and
that's my long answer.
that raises the interesting question, though, on that latter point about kind of where the training materials, how you put together a training course for training your supervisors, and I mean, how you manage that process, because that's a tricky proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we've had a team working on nothing but that for the last, couple of months to get the beginning of toolkits and training. And there's a website, and there's all these things that are starting the discussion. And frankly, it's sort of what we've been doing for the last year and a half, right?
Yeah.
And we've had to do new training, new ways of doing things. So a lot of the things we've done that we've learned, we're transferring out how to do this in this longer range. But you're right. And we're going to have to, just like the last year and a half, we're going to have to figure it out as we go, because it is new, it is harder. But I think people have shown that they're more flexible than we thought they were in this way.
Yeah. They're just a quick plug, only because it's back at my undergraduate alma mater. There is an institute that's been set up, I think, largely by a donation from the fellow whose name escapes me, that's the head of Salesforce.
Yeah, Mark Benioff. Yeah.
Yes, he funded, and I'll call it an institute for lack of a better word, but an institute on just exactly that problem called the Future of Work.
Yeah.
And I have no idea sort of what kind of progress they've made, but this has been going for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so it's an enormous effort, but it's an effort that's very important for us to get right. So we're going to be doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Very interesting discussion, and on everybody's mind, that's for sure. Any other questions or topics to send to Mike before we move on to the next item?
Yeah, I'm ready to hear from the Lawrence Hall. So.
Okay. Well, on that note, then we will turn things over to Kaylee to talk about the Lawrence Hall and the goings on there, activities. And Kaylee, then take it away, please.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to share today. Let me get set up. Many of you I have met or been on calls with. I actually started participating in CAG meetings just prior to the pandemic, when our director, Rena Dorff, couldn't join. But we have officially transitioned to, I will be joining the meetings from now on. So it's great to kind of be officially part of the group. And just my plan today is to give you a bit of an overview about the Lawrence Hall of Science, with an emphasis on kind of what we've been up to over the last 20 or so months of pandemic life, because even though we have been closed to the public for most of that time, we've actually had quite a bit going on. So I'm excited to share with you all. A little bit of background about the Lawrence Hall of Science. We are UC Berkeley's Public Science Center. We were founded in 1968. Named after, of course, E.O. Lawrence, same namesake as the lab. When Berkeley was looking for a way to honor Dr. Lawrence, they considered, should we name a hall on campus? Should we name a dorm after him? And 1968 was about the same time that Frank Oppenheimer was in the process of founding the Exploratorium across the bay. So of course, UC Berkeley wanted to get in on that, founding a science center after a prominent scientist. So that is how we came to be. And here is our mission, which is to inspire and engage through science discovery and learning in ways that advance equity and opportunity. And we do this in a variety of ways. We are, of course, a public science center that you can visit. And we call that kind of direct experiences. So coming to our center or being out in the community where we take our programs and our work and actually facilitate learning experiences. We also develop instructional materials. So those are things like curriculum used in classrooms, activities used in and out of school learning settings. We do quite a bit of work around capacity building and professional learning for both individual educators and education systems. So how can we, as an education community, kind of improve our practices and build our capacity to deliver the highest quality and most effective science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM learning experiences. To that end, we also create models. So looking at different ways of offering STEM learning experiences that then get translated out into the broader community in different ways. And then lastly, we develop tools and resources. So these are things like apps or other mechanisms for actually doing effective STEM education. And we consider ourselves to have kind of three key groups that we work with in different ways. So first, of course, being learners of all ages, but primarily most of our resources are put into the kind of pre-K to 12 learning space, although we do also do work in undergraduate, occasionally graduate education, and adult learning. We also work with educators, and sometimes we call it little e educator versus big E educator. So big E educator is kind of the formal term for like a teacher, right? But we also work with little e educators. So people who are maybe not formally trained or not formally trained as classroom teachers, but working in the education space. So people like after school instructors or other museum educators, even parents and families can kind of fall into this area. And then lastly, we work with a wide variety of partners, from community-based organizations to STEM research facilities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But underlying everything we do is research, learning research. So what makes us stand apart from other science centers and children's museums, even here in the Bay Area, is that we are an organized research unit on the UC Berkeley campus, which means we are actively producing learning research in everything we do. We have close to $18 million in active National Science Foundation and other federal agency funding related to doing STEM learning research, and exploring from a research perspective, best practices is what really fuels our development model. So that's kind of what makes us stand apart from our peer institutions who we also partner with and work with and are wonderful in a variety of ways. And then I wanted to share, we are just in kind of the final stages of a year-long strategic planning process. This was a really community-driven effort that we took kind of advantage of the COVID moment when so much disruption is happening in the education space to rethink, what are we going to prioritize over the next few years? We spoke to somewhere around 360, 370 community members, including representatives from Berkeley Lab and other national labs. And through a kind of facilitated process, we landed on these 6 strategic priorities. So these are areas that we're going to be focusing our work on in the next few years. And I share these because, as I'll talk about a little bit later, we're always actively looking for partners and looking for ways to really connect these priorities to work that's already happening in the community. Next, I wanted to give just a quick snapshot of our some of our impact statistics. You can get a sense of the scope and scale of the work we do. We, of course, do a lot of work here in the San Francisco Bay Area, both at our facility, where in a typical year, we have about 150,000 visitors come to the facility. We also go outside of our walls quite a bit. You can see over the last 10 years or so, we have brought STEM to our communities through outreach vans, which have traveled about 6 million miles, primarily around Northern California. But then quite a bit of our work happens through that kind of model building, instructional materials development, and capacity building work that we do. So for example, for the past decade, about 25% of K-12 students in the US have used materials developed by the Lawrence Hall of Science. So that's the kind of impact that we have been having over the last 50 or so years. And through the 6 priorities I shared earlier, we're looking to have an even kind of broader and deeper impact going forward. So don't want to go into every single thing that we have going on because there's quite a bit, but I did want to share some kind of operational highlights that we've experienced over the last year. So I'll share, we closed to the public on March 13th, 2020. And like everyone else, it was a period of great uncertainty for us. And we really, as I mentioned, took the time over the last year to both, continue work that we're doing, but also rethink the kind of work that we're doing and sort of seek to make it more impactful for this disruption moment and going forward. So when we transitioned to being close to the public and working virtually, most students across the country were participating in virtual learning in this last school year. So our curriculum development teams worked really hard to create extra resources and provide extra support to educators and students in virtual learning. We ended up having about over 2 million students and over 75,000 educators use the virtual learning resources that we developed in that closure period, that virtual learning period rather. We've also used this time when we're close to the public to do a major overhaul of our facilities. So work that we had been planning on doing anyway that would have happened over a, say a 5-year period in phases, we've been able to squish into 1-ish years. So that has been quite exciting for us. Notable things, we are working on building a new outdoor nature learning lab on our site. So taking even more advantage of the beautiful view that we share with the lab and allowing visitors to explore kind of natural environment of the Berkeley Hills through the facility that we're building. We also provided, in addition to the digital learning resources I mentioned, we also provided hands-on learning support in our community during the school closures related to COVID. So we had our museum educators support distance learners at Berkeley Unified School District sites. And we also worked with community partners such as Oakland Reach, based in Oakland, to provide these kinds of innovative and inquiry-based STEM learning experiences that students were not getting due to the closure and the transition to virtual learning. So that's what happened up until about June of 2021. And then we were very excited to open in a limited way to the public through our on-site summer camp program, our on-site summer fun day program, which took place completely outside at our facility, and some community events over the course of summer. We reached about 2,500 families and youth all around the Bay Area through those experiences. And now we are coming up soon to our grand reopening of our indoor facility to the public in October of this year. So that will be an exciting time to kind of show off the facility's work that we've done. We'll have all new exhibits, all new programs. We've also been doing a lot of internal kind of organizational work on processes and getting our team in the best possible position to implement those strategic plan priorities. So we're very excited to be able to welcome folks back to the space. I also wanted to give just some bullet points about how we've worked with Berkeley Lab in the past. So first and foremost, being a good neighbor. So coordinating on different kind of safety and transportation issues on our shared hill. For example, all of the work that got done to related to fire mitigation, taking out all of those trees over the last couple of years. I know our teams coordinated on getting that work done. Berkeley Lab has had a presence on our advisory council, which is kind of the equivalent of our board for the last several years and historically as well. And then of course we participate in CAG. We've also done some sort of special project work. So for example, we had the opportunity to speak to about 150 or so out of school educators based in Mexico City through the work that Berkeley Lab is doing with Mexico City on renewable energy and energy independence. So that was an exciting moment to be able to connect with those educators. This was even during COVID. We've also done special events. So for example, this was now a couple of years ago, which is kind of hard to believe, but when we had the International Year of the Periodic Table, Lawrence Hall of Science was able to host a great event affiliated with Berkeley Lab on the periodic table up at our site. And we would, love to continue doing work like that around celebrating milestones in science and translating those into learning experiences for the public. And then last, one of the ongoing collaborations we have is the Midday Science Cafe series with the Science at Cal program, which is based at the Lawrence Hall of Science. I'm not going to talk too much about that because the Science at Cal executive director, Dee Ruster, I think she's also a member of CAG, and I think will be presenting in the future meetings. So stay tuned for that, and you can learn much more about that ongoing program, which has been a great collaboration. And then I just wanted to share a couple more examples of additional kinds of work that we've done with the STEM research community at UC Berkeley. So you can get a sense of the other sort of things that we're looking for when we are talking with STEM research partners. So we are frequently the contributor of National Science Foundation funded projects broader impacts plans. So every NSF award has to demonstrate how it has broad impact beyond the sort of niche science that it's working in. So sometimes that looks like training graduate students. Sometimes it looks like something a little bit more fun and innovative, like some of the work we've done. So two exciting recent things that we've done are, we're actually in this is an active award right now, developing an animated musical series for 6 to 9-year-olds all about data security. So I've seen the first animated video and listened to the very catchy song about translating like very complex ideas about data security to kind of basic understanding of data privacy. So that's a really fun thing that should be rolling out very soon. And then another completed project is one of our science literacy specialists worked with a researcher and that researcher's 9-year-old daughter to write a picture book all about robotics, which is the researcher's area of expertise. And so that picture book was published through one of our publishing partners. It's available to every classroom that uses that particular curriculum. We were able to distribute about 1,000 copies for free to robotics programs and STEM classrooms all across the country. So this is the kind of work that we're really excited about in working with the scientific community. And I'll highlight just one more thing about one of Berkeley's most exciting researchers and projects to come out over the last few years. So we have a wonderful relationship with the Innovative Genomics Institute and have been working with them for the last year or so to create a hands-on high school unit using the CRISPR technology. So this whole unit includes everything from the instructional guide for the educators to professional learning support for educators to be able to implement it in their classrooms, to all of the lab materials that you actually need to use the CRISPR technology in a high school classroom setting. We've also piloted this in our summer camp program over the last 2 summers. So getting back to that research-based approach of everything we do, this has been extensively piloted and built on other learning models that we've developed over time. This is getting very close to final actual publication and sale. So that should happen sometime in the next few months, and we'll be really excited to see it start to roll out all across the country. So I just wanted to end then with a bit of a call to action of ways that you could possibly get more involved with Lawrence Hall of Science. So first and foremost, of course, we hope to welcome you and your families to our facility starting in late October. We also have camps and classes, both online and in person, kind of active all the time. So take a look at those offerings. We're actually going to be launching our summer camp sign up sometime in the next couple of months, because summer camps fill up so fast in the Bay Area. So if you have a age 4 to age 16 child in your life, bookmark that, and I hope we'll see them over next summer. You can also, of course, partner with us. As I mentioned, we're always looking for and open to collaborations with STEM researchers, with community organizations, with other partners to co-develop research or resource or an exciting event. Again, we do a lot of work outside of our walls. So even if you have your school has a science festival, or your library is doing a literacy series focused on science, those are kinds of activities that we participate in, time allowing. So would love to connect with you on that. And then, of course, there are many other ways to support the kind of work that we do. We have an annual benefit event that is coming up in spring 2021. We actually just made the very painful decision to move it from November to spring. So I don't have a date for that yet, but it will be raising funds for our animal discovery zone and feature a really cool talk from Joel Sartori, who is a National Geographic wildlife photographer and founder of the Photo Arc Project. And he's going to have some exclusive East Bay endemic species animal photos to share exclusively at that event. We also have philanthropic opportunities, large and small. Some of our big initiatives right now is building the nature lab that I mentioned. We're also building a new gender neutral restroom, which, while not the most necessarily exciting or innovative thing, something that we feel is extremely critical in this day and age, and something our visitors have been asking for a long time. So we're prioritizing that construction. We're also in the midst of revitalizing our state-of-the-art planetarium. And as I mentioned, we're also building our hands-on animal discovery zone. So those are all things that we're currently prioritizing and working on right now. And I think I'm out of time, so I'll end. If there are any questions or discussion, here is my contact info if there's anything to follow up on. But I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see folks. And yeah, welcome any additional conversation.
Very good. Thank you, Kaylee. Excellent presentation. And we've got ample time here if there's any follow-up questions.
Well, I can just say I've enjoyed serving with Lawrence Hall of Science on our advisory board, and Faith Dukes, who was on earlier and who's been building up our K-12 programs at the laboratory, will be our representative on that group, and it's been a good partnership that we're looking to strengthen. So thank you.
Very good. Excellent. Any other
Thank you.
questions, comments? Okay.
So I was actually just going to echo Mike. Kaylee, we really appreciated the partnership we've developed over the years. And hopefully once the pandemic has passed, we'll be able to do some more things in person. But it's been great working with Science at Cal and the Lawrence on Midday Science Cafe.
Yes, definitely. We appreciate it too.
I'd just like to add that bringing the work that you do, not just to the locals in California, but beyond. It's wonderful to
Mhm.
see that you're sharing this across such a broad area.
Yeah, absolutely. That, like I said, continues to be, a big priority for us. And that is also something that I think sets us apart from a lot of the other science-rich institutions here in the Bay Area, is that national and even international reach that we have through the research-based and model building approach that we take. So that definitely is something that we'll continue to be doing post-pandemic and beyond.
Okay. All right. Additional comments, ideas? Otherwise, we will start to wrap up the meeting this evening.
Thank you.
It's like we're good to go. Thank you all very much for coming out. Once again, the meeting has been recorded, as we always do, for video playback later and for posting on our website. Next meeting, November 8th. So make sure your calendars are marked. That'll be the last meeting of 2021. And we're putting together the schedule of meetings for next year. So that information will be coming out to you soon. So stay tuned for that. And as always, we're interested in hearing your ideas for additional presentations, topics to explore, for discussion, for presentation, and otherwise to advance the purposes of the CAG. So with that, we'll wrap up tonight. Thank you again.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I'm looking forward to the day that we can have you back up on the hill for a meeting sometime in the future. It'll be a while yet, but we're looking forward to it.
Sounds good, Mike. And it'll be a safe place from what I hear. You've been.
It will. It will. It'll be and as we tell people, even who are coming here now, this is the safest place you can be, is at the lab.
All right. Well, we'll take all of this forward, and thank you again. Have a safe and wonderful rest of the week, and we'll be in touch, and we'll see you in November. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.